You are now live on our system.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthew. And we'll begin. So obviously, a lot of people here are already members of SABRE, so are very familiar with what SABRE is and what SABRE is about. But obviously, a number of people here are not members, so we'll just quickly talk about SABRE itself. SABRE is a society for all British and Irish road enthusiasts, and we have about 7,000 members registered with the society, and we're originally a non-partisan society dedicated to the study of British and Irish roads, with a big focus on their historic aspect, for which obviously mapping is a huge part there. So SABRE Maps obviously features many historic maps of primarily of the United Kingdom and of Ireland, and we focus on scales from 1 to 25,000 up to the 10-mile range, usually from the end of World War I up to the present day. And obviously, because we've got such a wide-ranging collection, we think it's great for looking at those changes over time that take place, whether that's roads, railways, places, reservoirs, just generally as a whole great mapping resource for those periods. We've been working on SABRE Maps for about 16 years. So it's taken us quite a long time to get to where we are, with a lot of help from a lot of people on the way. Although obviously SABRE Maps itself is, as I say, 16 years or so old now. Maps have obviously been part of SABRE since the very beginning of the society, over 25 years ago. So it's obviously a good set of bedfellows. Okay, now hopefully people should be able to see my screen here with SABRE Maps displayed on it exactly as you would when you land on the website. And what I'd like to do first is just to take you through a little bit about how SABRE Maps is actually arranged to help people find things. Now, obviously, when you open SABRE Maps, it starts with a normal standard OpenStreetMap map so that you can actually orient yourself and get used to that modern mapping of exactly where you are. How we arrange everything is we arrange everything into categories of map. Now, they're generally around individual scales and individual time periods there. So as you can see, OpenStreetMap version, OpenStreetMap category, OS Ministry of Transport from the 1920s and 30s, which is obviously a great historical resource, really important to SABRE to have those. 1 to 50,000, various flavors of 1-inch maps, 10-mile maps and route planning, modern OS open data, so you've got some mini-scale maps there, 1/4-inch maps and 1 to 250,000, and then all sorts of different types. And the further down you go, the more eclectic they get, I think, sometimes. And obviously within each section, we have layer groups here. And they're generally arranged by year. Sometimes there's a lot of collections where 2 maps were released in a particular year. Sometimes that means we just shuffle them slightly one way or the other, although they are noted that being so. Sometimes, like in the 1945 case, there were just simply so many different printings that happened. We've actually just popped them together as a separate layer because it makes life a lot easier when there's 2 in 1945 and another one in 1946. If we're not careful, you obviously end up shuffling it so far out. And obviously you can simply pick through and go all the way through to the various years. So if I just pick one at random, obviously, as you can see, a whole wide range of mapping from 1966 here, available for viewing. You can simply scroll in to get the resolution up. And obviously, as you can see at the top here, we've got a little bit of annotation files that tell you exactly what map you're looking at, or more precisely, what map is in the center of the screen. The revisional print code, and the date of that printing. Note that we do use the printing date as the date of the map, even though some of the revision times are slightly away from that. Basically because that makes our lives a lot easier. And obviously, as you scroll around, you can see that obviously that annotation updates as you do that. So it's pretty straightforward. You can just simply select the type and then change to a different year, and there's a different edition, different printing, different revision there. Now, obviously, we have a lot of different maps, so I'd just like to quickly highlight a couple. I mentioned the OS Ministry of Transport map. Now, we were the first site to have a full set of the 1922-23 original editions, which show the original road numbers as they were first created. So if I scroll into a random part of the country, you can obviously see the special highlighting that was used at the time. So obviously red roads being A class and green roads being class 2 or B roads. And obviously they were revised. So as we move forward, you can actually see the different changes through, and we believe we have the largest collection in the world anywhere online of MOT maps, all the way through to the final sets that were released in the 1930s with their rather natty purple B roads there. The MOT maps were replaced conceptually, at least, by the 10-mile road maps. And again, we have a wide range collection here. So obviously from the original 1932 sheets, which were the first ones produced, through to the various different revisions. And you can see that there are actually changes as it goes through. So obviously, if we quickly look at the A88 as it was, as we drop forward, suddenly it becomes the A9. So obviously that, for historical purposes for us, is really important there. But obviously it's not just SABRE adjacent. We also have obviously all the general mapping. So obviously a wide range of popular edition sheets and popular edition base sheets, again by each year and going through. And the other thing that we have quite a lot of that people don't generally see is half-inch sheets, which obviously were a big thing in Ireland. And so obviously a lot of our Irish coverage is at the half-inch scale. But we do have, and we are planning on extending the coverage in Great Britain with that over the next few months. The other thing that we uniquely have, that a lot of people got very excited when we announced, is the highway plans layer. And the highways plans layer is non-standard mapping. It is from various archival research that's been taken place by members of SABRE. And obviously people are familiar with the ringways map, which obviously is a whole load of collections of motorways and other roads that were not actually proceeded with in London, and would have given us a very, very different look to the capital city, and based upon modern OS sheets at the background there. Now, one of the things that we're really, really proud of, and Rob, who's obviously hosting this today, did a great job in getting this done, is our map fader functionality. Now here at the bottom here, you've got a button here that says enable map fader. And what we can do with this is literally you can compare any layer that we have with any other layer. An absolute full set. So if you want to compare it, the ringways map with the 1974 1 to 50,000 sheets, we can do it. You can actually just it's the same categories and the same layer settings there, and you can use the slider to fade in and out. So here's my, my personal favorite bit of the Ringways map research. Turns out that yes, this road really did plan to go through a little gap in the Ford factory at Dagenham. And that's the sort of wonderful thing that we can do here with that map fader. It is absolute game changer for checking different revisions, different sheets, and see where changes are. So obviously, for example, here, 1974, 1 to 50,000. So what's the difference between the 1974 edition and the 1975 edition? Well, we can find out by moving in and out. And the answer is not huge amounts, apart from you can see the district name appears here. Obviously, a lot of our mapping is before 1975. And the reason for that is down to copyright requirements. Crown copyright, which is Ordnance Survey maps in Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and government copyright maps for OS Island lasts for 50 years. So obviously, 1st of January every year is the start of the day that starting gun goes. So obviously, you won't see any maps with a copyright date of 1976 or later on SABRE Maps yet. Wait for that to come next year. There is a little exception to that rule. We do have probably the largest collection anywhere of OS open data mapping. Now, obviously, OS are quite picky about exactly what they release and what they don't. So we have a full set of 1 to 250,000 sheet open data mapping from 2010 right up to the latest release in 2025. OS just released the latest version of Miniscale, so look out for that in the next few days. That will appear. It's almost ready to release, what we have to do with that. Then finally, in terms of modern maps, again, we showed you the OpenStreetMap at the start. There are some various different tile sets that we have in place for OpenStreetMap that give quite a different view. So it demonstrates how the same kind of modern mapping data can be displayed in all sorts of different ways. Down to Open Railway Maps, obviously highlights the railways there, to French mapping and French mapping styles. We'll zoom in a moment, and German ones and all sorts of different things. So it gives you that difference of how to look at things there. Okay. Do we have any questions at this point, Rob?
We haven't got any in the chat, but if anyone wants to raise their hand, please feel free.
No?
Nope, I think you're good to go, Stephen.
Excellent. Okay, that's not a problem. Okay, so obviously, SABRE Maps has just this enormous range, and I don't want to bore everyone to death by literally going through every single map player there is. There's just an awful lot there. Enjoy, play with it, and see what you can find. But we're not just about the map displays themselves. We've also got a number of other functionalities that we think that you'll find useful. For example, if we look at the sheet finder is a way of finding what maps we actually have for a particular location. Opens up and you can pick any scale that you like. So if we stick to 1 inch and let's pick Glasgow, you simply click on the location that you want. And on the right hand side there, you can see it literally lists every map that we have available for that location. And then when you click on either the picture or the link, it brings you to the midpoint of that map, whatever that is. So again, if I just pick a different scale, 1/4 inch scale, pick a random place, let's pick central London somewhere. Again, pick out exactly what different editions, different prints that we have here. It's organized by sheet name first, and date, then by date, and obviously we move forward. 3rd edition there, 4th edition. Moving forward, you can see just how many we actually have here. Into the 5th series, all the way into the 1970s here, and all the different editions. And then obviously into the modern open data mapping. And again, just click on it. There it is. We'll obviously be looking at Sheet Finder in more depth, hopefully in a later chat. Okay, we also have the Co-ordinate Finder, which again, I'm opening in a different window just to make it easy to see. It is a map based around these islands. And literally, it's very, very simple. Wherever your mouse cursor is, it will convert that into whatever format that you're interested in. So obviously, it uses a huge wide range of modern and archaic formats there. So obviously, you know, OSGB grid in various types, the Irish grids, and obviously, as I move into the middle of the Irish Sea, it populates both sets because obviously the grids overlap there. The archaic maps from Cassini, based on the origin of Delamere, and the 2 bond projections that are commonly used, those of Scotland and Ireland. Now, one thing to bear in mind is those are in miles from the origin, whereas the original sheets there are actually measured in feet. But that gives us just such a huge number to work with, so hence we've done that conversion. And then there's the various War Office grids, the various different ways of measuring lat and long, because they're not all the same there. And then at the bottom, just UTM zones, the Universal Transverse Mercator zones, 29N, 30N, and 31N, which cover these islands there. So it's really simple. So if you wanted to know, if we go to the Houses of Parliament, where are, as long as I can find the Houses of Parliament, of course, we'll do that. We'll do that. Charing Cross, Trafalgar Square. Where are they in any of those coordinate systems? There it is. And that's obviously invaluable for georeferencing and for simply understanding how archaic mapping was actually all put together as well. There. So I really like Coordinate Finder. It kind of hides away a little bit, but it's quite useful. And the Convert Coordinate box is a little, very simple thing. Obviously, latitude and longitude, WS84, just click Convert, and it gives you where you were. So you can obviously easily copy and paste any of these out if you wish. But if you're interested in converting different coordinates, fine. We have our 2 coordinate converters here, one for Great Britain and one for the island of Ireland. And obviously this is based upon the original Field and Maps Society functionality there. So we're obviously really grateful for Ed for actually originally writing this stuff and releasing it in such a way that we can host it. And obviously it's really simple. So if you wanted to just simply put in a lat and long value and convert, it converts all of the other to the right systems. As you can see, there's just huge amounts of different flavors that we have here that are obviously useful for map historians to be able to do. There's an awful lot of stuff there. And obviously there is a separate one for Ireland. You can either switch to Ireland. It uses all the different Irish reference systems there. Oof. Okay, so that's those two. The next item down, obviously, is the Grid Calibrator. The Grid Calibrator is where you can help us. And basically, it is used for literally calibrating maps, for georeferencing them. It's a really simple item that we've given in-house here. So if I obviously just find one of the maps that we're asking people to help with, it literally pops up and it's really simple. You can click on the various points as it asks, tells you which one it's looking for, and literally you can click on it. This does require a SABRE account. It does require you to be logged in because of the way that it stores that, allows people to store things on the server. So obviously we can't allow that to happen in public for security reasons. So you must be registered and logged into SABRE to use that. It's really, really easy. And you can help us by doing a map in 5 minutes or so, would you say, Rob?
Yeah, I'd say so. It's about that.
Yeah, literally 5 minutes, and then it's all done for us. And we can then take that data that you've generated and create the map tiles from that. Really, really straightforward. And obviously, something the Grid Calibrator will be looking to do a similar session in a few months' time with the Grid Calibrator and actually go through it with people for a click along. There is obviously a lot of help with that. So obviously it tells you how to do things. And there's actually some YouTube videos as well to help people go through them. But we've obviously got them all there. Then obviously a few bits and pieces here. So a little bit more information about SABRE Maps. So you can have a little look at how we do things. It's all in there and publicly available so people can see and understand and ask questions. There's a little donation button there because obviously hosting is not free and we do rely exclusively on donations to do that. Nobody pays us. We don't put advertising on. So it is purely reliant on members and non-members throwing a couple of quid or a couple of euros in the kitty every so often to allow us to do this. The next item down is a search button. Now, what the search will do is it ties in with a SABRE wiki, so you can actually type in any vaguely major place, any road, any junction name, any certain name of any services, and it's all in there. So, for example, if I just pick a name of road at random, the A38. It actually goes away and it tells you exactly where it is, gives you a nice little line there, points and ends, and obviously you can read more about it there. As mentioned, you can do it with places as well. So if I again choose Glasgow, it obviously picks out the city centre, and obviously you can then look around and you can use it quite happily, the different categories, different layers, and it will stick that little cursor there with that. There's a little underused little thing here that is include pictures in your search. If you include pictures in your search, what it will do is it will go away and it includes pictures within the SABRE galleries. So if you wanted, there we are. As long as they're actually marked properly, they show up quite happily within there, and you can go and look at them and you can investigate what they look like properly, and it obviously brings you up the image there. Very simple, but very, very effective. And obviously, like I mentioned, we can do it on historic layers as well. So if I again pick up the 1922 MOT map, just pick the A1. We can obviously zoom in and we can see where it differs from the original historic layout. So we can actually just pick that out really easily between the two. People don't seem to realize that exists, but I think it all ties that whole thing together there. Obviously some very simple few. Next one down where you can enable markers. So you can just simply click on the map and it will leave you a marker in place. And then you can obviously swap. You find one that has, there we are, and they stay where they are. So if you wish to compare individual places in that methodology, then that's there for you as well. And then obviously the traffic counts layer is something that takes quite a long time, but you can actually look at how busy each individual road is there. So obviously there's a whole load of extra functionality hidden behind all of these buttons that people generally don't seem to be very aware of. When I talk to people and they say, oh, we'd like this. And I say, have you tried this? And generally they say, what's that then? So there it is within those sections there. Okay, the other thing we need to look at this point is down here in the bottom right-hand corner. If we look for this little link here that says SABRE Maps sheet coverage information. And what that does when you click on it is it actually takes you to the SABRE wiki here, and which stores all of the maps that we actually have. So in what we call coverage projects. So if we look at the 1-inch 7th series, you can actually see which sheets we have, a little bit of information about them, where the print codes actually are and what they look like, what you're looking for, and a whole bunch of what we have and what we don't have. And what we don't have is that one copy of Doncaster, one revision, that one print code. So if anybody here actually has a copy of sheet 103, revision, specifically that revision, we'd absolutely love to hear from you, because that's the only one that we're missing across the whole of the 7th series printing. That's something that is just huge coverage compared with anyone else here, which obviously brings me, to look at a couple of little comparisons there for people to understand. Obviously, I would imagine everyone here is familiar with the National Library of Scotland's amazing resource. It's really good. We're a big fan of it, and we work closely together with the NLS here. But it's important to note that we focus on slightly different things here, and we have different amounts of resource available. Here, our strengths of SABRE mapping is that we have lots and lots of editions in the specific scale groups that we look at in the specific time scale that we have. NLS, obviously, as a legal deposit library, has an absolutely huge range, especially of those large scale maps that we just simply couldn't hope to deal with. There's just so many of them at so high a scale. So their great strength is in that scale boundary, whereas ours is in individual editions far more than so for 7th series here, we have far more than the NLS hold there. So different ways of looking at it, different ways of presenting that data as well. Okay. Any questions on what we've mentioned so far?
Yeah, we've got a couple.
Okay.
I'm going to do them in slightly different orders what they've come in. Fraser asks, I think this is about the sheet finder, Stephen.
Yeah.
Thumbnails show marginalia. Can you view that in the main panel?
Yes, it's exactly here in the annotation. It's exactly the same information. In fact, in the annotation, it's slightly more because where we know it, we have a month, as well as just a date. So if I go back to the sheet finder, again, I'll just pick, it's on half inch, so we'll just pick half inch. Harrogate, Bradford, Leeds and Bradford, sheet 9 MOT map. So let's click on it. Harrogate, Leeds and Bradford, sheet 9, 1922-23. So that's how they link up there. So you can see them in both places.
I think what might also be worth mentioning, Stephen, is that when we don't have a sheet, it tells you what years we do have either side, isn't it? When you
Yeah.
zoom onto somewhere.
Yeah. So if I pick a random point in the mid 1950s, obviously it tells you there. If we don't have the sheet, then obviously it's not there, or one wasn't produced there. We do have, and we've started work on this, as Rob mentions, where we actually actively state that there wasn't one published in that year, and give you the years either side where one is. So obviously, Buxton Matlock, there was not one map produced in 1961 at this scale, but there was in 1960, and there it is. And there was in 1962 as well, the other side, and there that is as well. Hopefully that answers that question.
We had a question from Richard, which was when you were talking about the calibrator.
Yes.
It says there's often insets on maps for islands, etc. Are these unbound from the parent map to correct the latitude longitude?
They are we do them within whatever format they are originally calibrated in. So, for example, if I move back there, let me close some of these, open the Grid Calibrator, and I'll pick one that I know we have something of. So, Irish half-inch grid, half-inch map. As you can see, it's got it's the Irish grid printed opposite. We actually have to do this is a slightly complex map because the map itself was based on the Irish bond mapping, and we know where the corners are in that. So we actually add those later on. But obviously you can see here that it tells you exactly what point in the grid we're looking for you to click at. So here, the first point would be there. And then it tells you again where to click next and across. Now, where we have insets, we actually treat them as if they're separate maps altogether. We know where the corners are, we know where the grids are, and then we do the pixie magic in the background to convert it all to WGS84 to actually get that tile displayed in place. Hopefully that answers that without getting too nerdy.
No, thank you, Stephen. The final question was Paul. It says, where do you source your mapping from?
Where do we source it from? It's basically crowdsourced. So some is from academic libraries, from legal deposit libraries. As mentioned, we have a good relationship with the NLS, and we share mapping with that. So if you actually go and look at the NLS's Land Ranger coverage, you'll notice that a couple of them were actually sourced from us. And people actually can scan at home and send us the individual map scans, and then we stitch them all together, back together again, and then produce them from there. So we have literally a huge range of sources. We keep records of who scanned what, because each individual map scan has its own copyright separate from the map itself. So obviously we have to track that to make sure that that we're not giving permission for anything that we shouldn't be there. So obviously, the other follow-up question from that I often hear is, well, how do I download that particular map? And the simple answer is we can't allow that, unfortunately, because of the copyright situation of the scans themselves. So yes, so some of them are from my personal collection, some are from other SABRE members' personal collections, some are map scans that have been kindly done, maps or map scans that have been kindly donated to us. and we scan them. Others, people occasionally post us or give us actual map sheets for us to scan, and then we hand them back when we're done with them. And obviously we look to preserve those electronically for future generations. My biggest fear, and something I hate, and I'm sure a lot of people here will agree, is I see people doing lots of crafting projects where they cut up maps and use them for like wrapping paper and all sorts of things. And that really scares me, because I sit there going, oh, I hope that's not the last of the only 100 copies that were ever printed of that map. And I live in permanent fear that someone's cut up a map that they do not realize is very rare, and they've just cut it up into a crafting project. So I regularly beg people in this situation to please don't use it yet. Let me check which one it is. Let me scan it, and you can have it back. Not a problem. But please, please, please let me scan it first, so that we've got that for posterity, for future generations. Hopefully that answers that, Rob.
Yeah, that's it for questions. Thank you to the three of you that asked it. Thanks, Stephen.
Okay, cool. So I just want to move on a little bit here to, what are we looking to do in future that we've done there? I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're looking to expand our coverage of Ireland, primarily with their half-inch series. That is very, very under-resourced. There's very few places on the internet that have Irish mapping in any detail. So we're looking to expand that out. We're also looking to do a lot more with 1 to 25,000 mapping. We've got a lot of work done on those. So we're hoping to bring those out again in future. The issue that we have is the higher the scale, the more map tiles that we have, so the more expensive it actually is to host. So we do have to be a little bit careful around that and make sure that, we can actually afford to bring that to people and maintain it as we should. Another thing that we're looking to be able to do is to add modern vector layers. There's a lot of Ordnance Survey open data that gets released as vector layers. And I showed earlier how we actually do use vectors in a little way at the moment. Again, if I just pop up the A1. We use vectors in a little way at the moment, but what we want to be able to do is to present that in a modern way, so that we can actually use all of this data, this amazing amounts of data that the Ordnance Survey have released over the last 16 years, and bring it to people. So again, you can easily compare and place vector data on top of the huge amounts of paper mapping data, if you like, that we have there. And you can look and compare, contrast, see changes, all sorts of things. Vector map district, there's all sorts of things that we can do. There's the open roads data sets, and we have that. The problem is, with the best will in the world, it takes quite a bit of resource and development work to bring that to fruition. And obviously, as we're a bunch of volunteers, nobody gets paid in SABRE. We just volunteer what time we can. We're obviously very, very reliant on the few people with the right skill sets to be able to help to do that. So if anybody here wants to get involved in development side, Rob's is probably the lead developer at the moment on maps. So if you have any questions on how that works, then we'll ask Rob at the end. So we'd absolutely love to hear from you if you have those skill sets, or if you know of anyone who does. That would be amazing to do that. And then obviously, as copyright continues to expire, as maps continue to drop out of copyright, we're planning on bringing more. So we're already in the early phases of working out exactly how to bring 1976 1 to 50,000 coverage, which is basically the northern half of Great Britain. That drops out of copyright the next time we roll around to the 1st of January. So we're really looking forward to being able to bring people that mapping on that date, so that then we have 1 to 50,000 coverage of the whole of Great Britain. And obviously those 1976 copyright sheets for the southern half of Great Britain as well. So there's an awful lot there that we already have planned. There's a lot of European mapping that we can bring to there that we have ready and we can use. Again, the issue is simply one of time and resource. The will is there, and the functionality is there. We just have to have the right people and the right time to be able to do that. So on to the next thing, how can people help is also something that we get asked quite a lot. I mentioned earlier about we crowdsource mapping data. So any mapping that we've shown you the cost privilege projects, they tell you exactly what we're missing, exactly what we don't have. It tells you what we've got in the pipeline and what we don't have, as well as what we actually have on there. If you have looked through your own map collections, if there's any there that you don't have, that we don't have, we'd absolutely love to hear from you again. It is very simple to scan maps on domestic A4 scanners, the type that are on top of printers, on top of every printer these days. We get surprisingly good results off that. And obviously, if you don't have that facility, we'd love to hear from you. And we can actually do the scanning for you. Again, it takes a little bit of time to get that done, and then we will return the maps to you. Equally, if you have duplicates, if there's something that you're looking to get rid of in your collection, it's something we don't have, then again, we'd gladly have that to do that. Equally, we talked a little bit about the Grid Calibrator, which, as I mentioned, will be the subject of a future talk and a future discussion where we'll do a bit of a click along and we'll show people exactly how to do things with that. Again, that really helps us because that's a step that people can do simply from the comfort of their own living room. 5 minutes, click, 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 on grid lines, job done. And it really helps us. It sounds like just a little thing, 5 minutes, but it makes such a huge difference to us because again, it's something that people can get involved with. There's a load of other things as well. There's a little bit of back-end data. If you're good at simple data entry work, that really would help. Obviously, the annotation files are little text files in the background. Very simple to put together, but again, it takes a little bit of time to do that. And us doing that is time away from the scanning, the development, and all the rest of the bits and pieces that we all do there. Sheet finder data, there's a lot of that kind of stuff that people can do without, just simple access to a PC or a Mac, and that really helps. And again, I've mentioned it before a couple of times now, web development skills. That's our biggest hole and our biggest constraint on time here. And obviously, a couple of quid, a couple of euros in the pot, if you enjoy using maps, helps us just simply pay for the hosting. Nobody gets paid. Nobody gets even so much as expenses. We all do it for the love of it. Absolutely. So every single penny, every single euro cent that anyone donates goes straight to the hosting costs there. So really, what we're looking for, time and expertise of how people can help. Some of it is really simple. Some of it is, is a little bit more complex and requires specific skill sets. But a lot of it is, is there. And also your knowledge as well. There's a lot of people here who know a lot of stuff, far more than we do, about the detail of mapping, how it's all put together. Obviously, we're all learning here, and we all ask relevant questions. But if there's anything that we've got wrong, anything that isn't right and needs fixing, please tell us. We're not proud. We don't claim to know everything about everything. So obviously, we absolutely love to hear from you. If you can help with that, knowledge of there. So there's quite a lot there that people can help with. Very, very simple. Okay, so obviously that brings us to the end of the planned overview and the introduction to SABRE Maps here today. Rob, have we got any further questions that people have left for us?
We have indeed. John asks, are maps dissected and mounted on linen too complex to georeference?
They are and they aren't. Dissected maps are the bane of my life, quite frankly. It can be done. They can. But what we have to do is scan the map as a whole and then manually take out the backing. So we essentially undissect it using Photoshop or similar tools, literally taking each panel and rotating them and moving them so that they all match up and make a whole. And then once you've done that, yes, you can georeference them and display them. They're obviously never quite as good because they never quite match up. But yes, it is doable. I say it's doable. I can't do it. I've tried using Photoshop and it's one of the things that I'm just absolutely rubbish at. But other people have got some really great results from that over time. So yes, it's possible. I'd rather have the undissected versions to work with every time, but needs must, right? Hopefully that's good for that one.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. That's it for questions in the chat. If anyone's got any others, put your hand up, let us know.
Yeah, open the floor to everyone.
Absolutely.
Please ask away. Okay, if there's no questions, then what leaves me to say is thank you for coming this evening. I hope it's been enjoyable, just quick whistle stop tour and introduction only from where we have. We are planning on having future sessions where we look at things in more depth and individual things. So for example, look at the Grid Calibrator in depth, do click-alongs to show people just how easy it is, because it's all very well me telling people that it's great, but it doesn't substitute doing, does it, with these things. We will look at a little bit more in depth at how we actually produce the mapping, how we scan them, how we go through that whole process. Absolutely happy to share that knowledge and to show people how the magic actually happens behind the curtain. All sorts of different things are there that we have planned for future. So brilliant. Thank you very much. Keep your eye out on social media and the usual channels for announcements of those to come. Great. So thank you very much. Matthew, if I could just quickly pass back over to yourself just for closing up.
Well, thank you all very much all for coming. If you'd like to find out more about SABRE Maps, all the stuff that we have, you can join online at www.sabre-roads.org.uk. If you're not a member and you apply, we'll try and expedite any requests to join as soon as we can. So I'd like to thank Stephen on behalf of SABRE for tonight's presentation, and thank Rob for hosting, and thank you all for coming along on this beautiful January evening.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone. Okay, bye.
Bye.